Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 280 of CryptoBiography, and it is part 14 of The Smallest Magician, and here we go. The cloaks could not hide the fact of their being kobolds to her keen eyes. She felt Donegal go quite still next to her, and she suspected he saw the same thing. He whispered to Emby, "This is the moment. Stay safe, move away from me, keep your camouflage up." She immediately walked to the side, not nearer or farther from the assassin's wagon, but further from Donegal. They were perhaps 30 paces away. She didn't know exactly what Donegal was going to do, but knew it would be an attack of some kind. The assassins were spreading out, looking for dangers from all sides. 2 of them were on the far side of the wagon. 1 was in front, and 2 were on the close side. Just as Emby was wondering how Donegal would go about his attack, it started. His camouflage spell dropped. She choked back a warning, but knew he must have done it on purpose. What that purpose was, though, she did not find out. Immediately, the 2 closest assassins, 1 human and 1 kobold, drew small, nasty-looking crossbows and fired. They should have hit Donegal, but they did not. They stopped, a little more than an arm's length away, then fell harmlessly to the ground. He must have dropped his camouflage spell and put up that shield, she thought. Wish I'd been taught that. The assassin in front of the wagon, another human, who was the closest one to Emby, also drew a crossbow. This one, however, was heavier, and he was loading it with something unusually large. As he raised it to aim it at her master, she couldn't help herself. "Master!" she yelled in warning. As some sort of light lanced out toward the first 2 assassins, piercing them and making them slump to the ground, the 3rd assassin fired. The missile sped towards Donegal, and then, as it struck the invisible shield, it popped with a strange sound, and metal filaments of some kind popped out in all directions. They dug into the ground in front of Donegal. They arced over him and created a sort of net all around him. The net wasn't touching Donegal, but he couldn't move. She didn't know if he had a plan, and didn't know what to do herself either. He had told her not to interfere, with no real weapons and no spells that might help. She could only watch. The 2 other assassins were coming from the other side of the wagon, 1 from each direction, carefully, clearly expecting an attack from more than the 1 sorcerer in front of them. That might be their training, or it may be because of Emby's cry of warning. Either way, they did not hurry. The one with the special crossbow had put it down and brought out some kind of flat object. He gave it a bit of a shake, and it unfolded until it was a shield. But it was impossibly thin. It wouldn't stand up to a single blow from a sword or club. Still, the assassin advanced. Donegal fired another bolt from inside the net at the assassin with the shield. It fizzled out harmlessly on the thin device. Donegal fired several more, but they too fizzled out. The shielded assassin was advancing slowly, clearly trying to prevent Donegal from landing any spells, the other 2 advancing while circling around. They didn't seem to have shields, but they were also keeping a greater distance. Emby had the idea that they had a plan, and that plan involved the shielded assassin getting in close. Donegal started throwing bolts at the 2 unshielded assassins. The bolts were quite quick in the air, but the assassins were nimble and ready. They managed to dodge them. With Donegal still pinned under the net, Emby knew that, instructions or no, she must do something. Her camouflage spell could only help hide her. The candle-lighting spell might set something of theirs on fire, but she'd never set anything on fire that was on someone else's body, or moving. The big crossbow the shielded assassin had left behind was the only thing she could think of. She saw no bolts on it to load it with, but she picked it up, trying hard to keep her camouflage spell going. She thought it slipped a bit when she took it up, but she held still a moment, the heavy weapon in both hands, while she readjusted it. She looked at all 3 assassins, but none of them seemed to have noticed her. She crept up on the shielded assassin. She wondered if Donegal would cast a spell that might hit her as well as the assassin, but she also had a shrewd idea that her master could tell exactly where she was. She hoped he understood that she couldn't stand by and assume that her master would be okay, especially when he'd already been trapped by these clever foes. The assassin was mere steps away from Donegal now, and Donegal was casting some spell that caused a great glow. Maybe it was a bluff, or maybe he was trying to make sure Emby had the assassin distracted. Whatever it was, Emby swung back and, feeling her spell slide off of her, brought the heavy crossbow over her head like she was splitting wood. The assassin was human, and while not more than average height, was significantly taller than her. Still, with surprise as her ally, she brought the crossbar straight down on the back of his head, near where it met the neck. The man dropped like a sack of potatoes. The other two assassins, one human and one kobold, saw her. They were distracted, not knowing which of the two targets should be attacked. She must have made a less threatening figure, but her master was still trapped. She could see they were deciding if it was worth a short amount of time to take her out and completely remove her as a threat before finishing Donegal. But there was a noise like a whip crack, and the net was destroyed. Emby ducked a little as part of the metal mesh flashed past her face, but it didn't hit her. The assassins knew what that meant. They turned on her master. They pulled out something from under their cloaks. They threw them on the ground, and smoke or dust billowed up, obscuring them. The closer one, who was also the remaining kobold, threw something at Emby. It hit her on the chest and popped, causing a puff of something to explode around her. Immediately she was blinded. Her eyes were stinging and running. She fell to her knees, and a sick fear was in her stomach, wondering if this blindness would be permanent. In a moment, Donegal was by her side. He whispered a warning that he was going to check her, then immediately pulled her hands away from her eyes. "Not magic," he said. "An irritant. Let me wash your eyes." He tipped her head back and, through magic, had a gentle stream of water cleaning her eyes. They felt improved immediately, although it was difficult to open her eyes to let them be washed. She found herself gasping with relief, both from the pain and the fear. She was almost sobbing. He stopped the stream. "I'll do more in a moment. First I want to check on the 3 assassins and their wagon." She laid on the ground, trying to get her breath back to normal. She could barely see. Donegal was walking away from the assassins she had hit and toward the 2 whom he had struck with his bolts and the wagon. Her eyes were such a distraction that she couldn't tell how much time it had elapsed when he got back to her. "Bring your head up a bit so I can get the water in your eyes again," he requested. She did, and he caused another magical spout of water to run into them, cool and soothing. Her eyes were feeling a lot better. "What's the situation?" she asked, through a bit of water running over her mouth. "The 2 I hit with spells are dead. The one you hit with the crossbow is heavily knocked out. I don't know if he'll recover yet. The other 2 escaped. The wagon driver drove off. I decided not to harm him or the horse. I suspect he'd not sign up for having 5 assassins as his passengers." "Are we going after the assassins?" "Yes, but you need to recover first. I think I have some spells that will allow us to track them down." "Won't they try to disappear in the city? We're not that far." "Yes, I think so." "That's enough water, I think," she said, and he stopped it. She shook her head to clear the water. After a good number of blinks, she could tell her eyesight was back, though her eyes, eyelids, and indeed the inside of her nostrils all hurt. "I don't want to push you if you're not ready," Donegal said. "I'm ready," she insisted. "We kobolds, we're tough." And that's the end of the story for this week. Still plenty more to come, obviously. I hope you're enjoying it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, contact us, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words of music, copyright 2022, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.